Have you ever walked away from a conversation with a woman feeling completely confused? Everything seemed to go well. The conversation was polite, comfortable, and even enjoyable. She smiled, she responded kindly, and nothing felt awkward. Yet, when it was over, there was no real connection, no excitement, and certainly no spark. You found yourself wondering, what exactly did I do wrong? If that experience sounds familiar, believe me, you're far from the only man who's faced it. In today's video, I'm going to explain why this happens so often. And more importantly, I'll share a simple 2-minute principle that can completely change the way women experience you from the very beginning. Instead of being remembered as another polite, friendly guy, you'll learn how to create genuine chemistry in a natural, respectful, and confident way. Stay with me until the end, because I'll walk you through the exact timing, mindset, and practical tools that make flirting feel effortless, regardless of your age, appearance, height, or financial situation. Before we begin, I have one quick favor to ask. If you appreciate honest, science-based advice designed specifically for men, take a moment to press the like button. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I genuinely enjoy seeing this community grow with viewers from all over the world. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you never miss future videos focused on confidence, communication, and men's health. Now let's start with a truth that surprises almost every man I work with. The biggest reason flirting fails usually has nothing to do with bad pickup lines. It isn't because you're not attractive enough. It isn't because you lack charisma. More often than not, the real problem is poor timing. Many men spend the first 10, 20, or even 60 minutes of a conversation staying completely safe. They remain in what I like to call interview mode. They ask about her career. They ask where she grew up. They ask about her hobbies, favorite movies, or what she enjoys doing on weekends. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these questions. They're polite, respectful, and useful for getting to know someone. The problem is that the emotional tone never changes. The interaction stays flat from beginning to end. Then, when they realize the conversation is almost over, they suddenly try to force a romantic compliment or reveal their attraction at the last possible moment. From a psychological perspective, that abrupt shift feels disconnected. Imagine watching an educational documentary that unexpectedly turns into a romance film halfway through. The transition feels strange because the emotional frame was never established early enough. Human communication works in much the same way. When attraction appears out of nowhere after a long period of emotional neutrality, it often feels unexpected instead of natural. There's another important reason waiting too long creates problems. It quietly communicates uncertainty. When a man only shows romantic interest near the end of an interaction, many women unconsciously interpret it as hesitation. They may assume he wanted to express interest earlier, but didn't have the confidence to do it. Even if she initially felt curious about him, that hesitation can slowly weaken the attraction that was beginning to develop. This is why one of the most common dating myths is also one of the most damaging. Many men believe the safest strategy is to avoid flirting until much later. In reality, the opposite is usually true. The emotional tone of the conversation is often established within the first few minutes. If you wait too long, you're not protecting yourself. You're simply allowing the interaction to settle into a purely friendly dynamic that's much harder to change later. For those of you joining me for the first time, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Carter, a urologist who has spent years working at the intersection of men's physical health, confidence, and psychology. My work isn't limited to helping men improve their physical well-being. I also focus on helping them communicate in ways that align with how people naturally build trust, attraction, and emotional connection. I don't believe in manipulative games. I don't teach rehearsed pickup lines or empty tricks. Everything I share is based on practical, ethical principles that respect both you and the woman you're speaking with. And today, I'm going to introduce one of the simplest techniques I know, one that can completely transform the way your conversations begin. Now let's look at the first habit that quietly keeps many good men stuck in the friend zone. It's the habit of waiting for the perfect moment to flirt. The truth is, that perfect moment rarely exists. If she agreed to meet you, accepted your invitation, or is already enjoying a conversation with you, you've already been given the opportunity to show genuine interest. You don't need to wait for a magical opening. Think about attraction the way you would think about lighting a campfire. If you wait until the wood is cold, damp, and difficult to ignite, creating a flame becomes much harder. The same principle applies to human connection. You create momentum early, not after the conversation has already settled into a predictable routine. This is exactly where the 2-minute rule becomes so powerful. Within the first 2 minutes of meeting her, introduce one small, playful moment. Nothing dramatic, nothing overly romantic, and certainly nothing that puts pressure on either of you. Just a light spark that shifts the emotional tone from formal to enjoyable. That single moment tells her you're comfortable, confident, and interested without making the interaction feel forced. The second habit is relying entirely on small talk. Many men never move beyond safe conversation because they believe playing it safe is the best strategy. They ask the usual questions. Where are you from? What kind of work do you do? How has your week been? Those questions are perfectly normal, and they absolutely have a place in conversation. But on their own, they don't create emotional energy. Real attraction usually grows through shared emotion, curiosity, and playfulness. One simple way to create that feeling is through playful assumptions. Instead of asking only factual questions, make a lighthearted guess about her personality. Imagine she's sitting with a novel in her hands. You could smile and say, "Let me guess, you were probably the student who always finished the extra credit assignments before everyone else." Hello. The goal isn't to be correct. The goal is to give both of you something fun to react to. Another useful technique is giving an intentionally ridiculous answer to an ordinary question. Suppose she asks what you do for a living. Instead of answering immediately, you might grin and say, "I'm an astronaut. I just got back from the moon this morning." Pause for a second, enjoy the smile, and then give your real answer. Moments like these interrupt predictable conversation patterns in a positive way. They help both people relax. They create laughter without trying too hard. Most importantly, they move the interaction away from an interview and toward genuine connection. You'll notice that none of these examples rely on clever pickup lines or rehearsed routines. They're simple, they're respectful, and they naturally communicate that you're comfortable expressing your personality. When you combine good timing with lighthearted conversation, you create an atmosphere where attraction has room to develop instead of hoping it appears on its own. The third habit that often creates problems is misunderstanding what teasing is supposed to accomplish. Some men hear the word teasing and immediately assume it means making sarcastic remarks, pointing out flaws, or trying to embarrass a woman. That approach almost always backfires. Instead of creating attraction, it damages trust and makes the interaction feel uncomfortable. Healthy teasing is completely different. It's light, playful, and always focused on harmless preferences or everyday habits rather than personal insecurities. For example, if she tells you she's naturally an early riser, you could smile and say, "That's impressive," although I'm starting to think people who enjoy mornings might actually be a different species. Or if she proudly admits she's a cat lover, you might laugh and reply, "I was just beginning to think you were perfect. Now you've given me something to question." The words themselves aren't what matter most. It's the relaxed smile, the friendly tone, and the obvious sense of play that make the difference. From a biological perspective, gentle teasing can create a small increase in emotional excitement. That slight boost in adrenaline is similar to the feeling people experience during playful attraction. Psychologically, it communicates confidence because you're comfortable enough to joke without trying to impress. Practically, it keeps the conversation energetic instead of allowing it to become predictable. The fourth habit is agreeing with everything simply to avoid disagreement. Many men believe constant agreement makes them appear kind and easy to like. Unfortunately, it often produces the opposite effect. When you never challenge anything she says, the conversation loses its sense of energy. Healthy attraction usually includes a little tension, curiosity, and playful disagreement. That doesn't mean arguing. It means showing that you have your own personality instead of automatically approving everything. Imagine she confidently tells you she makes the best pasta anyone has ever tasted. Instead of immediately agreeing, smile and say, "That's a pretty confident statement. I think I'll need some evidence before I believe you." Or perhaps she says horror movies never scare her. You could grin and respond, "I'm not convinced. You strike me as someone who hides behind a pillow during the scary parts." These responses aren't meant to prove her wrong. They're invitations to laugh, defend her opinion, and continue the conversation naturally. From a psychological standpoint, these playful challenges stimulate curiosity and engagement. They activate the reward systems associated with friendly competition and discovery. Emotionally, they show that you're relaxed enough to express your own perspective. And practically, they position you as someone who participates in the conversation rather than simply trying to earn approval. When used respectfully, a gentle challenge doesn't create distance. Instead, it creates the kind of interaction that feels memorable, balanced, and genuinely enjoyable for both people. The fifth habit is overlooking one of the most powerful parts of communication: appropriate physical presence. Flirting isn't based only on the words you choose. Your body language and the way you interact physically also shape how comfortable and connected another person feels. Of course, every form of touch should be respectful, welcome, and appropriate for the situation. One simple principle I like to call touch and release can make a meaningful difference. For example, while making a point during a conversation, a brief touch on her forearm can feel natural if the moment is appropriate. Then you let go immediately. If you're celebrating something together, a playful high five that lasts just a second longer than usual can create a warm, friendly moment. Or if you're walking through a crowded space, gently guiding her for an instant before releasing your hand can communicate awareness and consideration rather than pressure. The important part isn't the touch itself, it's the release. Constant physical contact often feels overwhelming. Brief, natural moments followed by space create comfort instead of tension. From a biological perspective, appropriate social touch can encourage the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. Emotionally, it helps create a sense of closeness without making the other person feel trapped. Practically, it adds warmth and rhythm to the interaction while still respecting personal boundaries. Always remember the golden rule. Take one step forward, then allow space. Healthy attraction grows through a balance of closeness and independence. Now let's combine everything we've discussed into a simple approach you can begin using the very next time you meet someone. Within the first 2 minutes, introduce one light, playful moment. That could be a playful assumption or a humorous answer that catches her by surprise. As the conversation develops, include a gentle tease about a harmless preference or habit. If she confidently makes a claim about something, respond with a friendly challenge that encourages her to play along. Whenever the situation naturally allows and the interaction is clearly comfortable, use brief, respectful touch followed immediately by release. Finally, offer a sincere compliment that goes beyond physical appearance. Instead of focusing only on how she looks, notice something about her personality or the way she expresses herself. You might say, "I really enjoy how enthusiastic you become when you're telling a story. Your energy makes it easy to stay engaged." Compliments like that often feel more meaningful because they recognize who she is rather than simply what she looks like. The truth is, you don't need dozens of complicated techniques. You don't need a collection of memorized lines. Using just 2 or 3 of these simple tools naturally is often enough to transform the emotional tone of a conversation from polite and predictable into relaxed, engaging, and genuinely flirtatious without making either person uncomfortable. If you're listening to all of this and thinking, Doctor, maybe this works for younger men, but I'm too old to start over, I want to challenge that belief for a moment. Age is rarely the factor that determines attraction. Presence is. The way you carry yourself, the confidence you project, your ability to enjoy the conversation, and the respect you show another person matter far more than trying to compete with someone younger. The science behind attraction doesn't suddenly disappear as we get older. Qualities like confidence, emotional warmth, playfulness, and authenticity remain attractive throughout every stage of life. Over the years, I've watched men in their 60s and 70s completely change the way they experience dating and relationships. The remarkable part wasn't that they became different people. It was that they made a few small adjustments in how they started conversations. Instead of trying to impress, they focused on creating comfort. Instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity, they introduced a little playfulness early. Those simple changes often produce dramatically different results. Imagine beginning your next conversation without feeling pressure to perform or worrying about saying exactly the right thing. Imagine knowing that you don't need a perfect script. All you need is one small, genuine moment of playful energy during those first 2 minutes. That single shift can completely change the direction of the interaction. So here's a challenge I'd like you to accept. The next time you meet a woman you're genuinely interested in, don't spend the entire conversation hiding your personality. Don't wait until the last minute to show your interest. Within the first 2 minutes, introduce one playful moment. Make a lighthearted assumption. Share a harmless joke. Offer a gentle challenge that invites her to smile. Keep it natural. Keep it respectful. And most importantly, keep it authentic. Remember, this isn't about manipulation or clever tricks. It's about setting the emotional tone from the very beginning so the conversation has room to grow naturally. When you do that consistently, you'll likely notice a difference not only in how women respond to you, but also in how relaxed and confident you feel. Always remember this, my friend. Growing older doesn't mean losing your confidence, your value, or your ability to build meaningful relationships. With a few intentional changes and a willingness to practice, you can continue developing stronger communication skills, greater self-assurance, and more rewarding connections throughout every stage of life. If you found today's video helpful, I'd truly appreciate your support. Take a moment to press the like button. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I always enjoy hearing from this incredible community. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you never miss future videos focused on men's health, confidence, relationships, and practical psychology. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I'm Dr. Jocelyn Carter. Until our next conversation, stay confident, stay respectful, stay playful, and never forget this simple principle. The first 2 minutes don't determine everything, but they often determine the frame that shapes everything that follows.